Hello there, Qckslvrslash, and today we have a video courtesy of Zach Wolftamer in the Tier 6 Japanese cruiser, the Aoba. And for a long time, the Aoba was a massive upgrade from the Furitaka. And you really enjoyed it when you got to it. But a number of patches ago, the Furitaka got another gun upgrade, or hull upgrade, that gave it the same gun layout as the Aoba, and that completely transformed the Tier 5 Japanese cruiser, making the Aoba maybe a little less drastic of an improvement, but in another sense it should improve things for playability and consistency, because you've got some experience with the setup, with the kind of gun layout and how the ship behaves one tier lower. Now, I've always kind of believed that the Aoba is one of the stronger Tier 6 cruisers, and Tier 6 ships in general, when sailed correctly. And that's really the big point here, is it's about sailing things correctly. You know, ships like the Leander, also Tier 6, can do pretty decently in close because they've got that smoke, they have that out. But when you look at the Aoba, she is long, she is thinly armored, I mean, pretty much all cruisers at this tier are, and a pretty easy target. She is quick, but, you know, speed only maybe helps you dodge the first volley before someone corrects in their aim. What she does bring is decent gun range, 13.6, but much better shell arcs. The Cleveland and Leander both have some pretty lofty arcs. It lets them shoot over islands, which is handy, but longer range gunnery becomes tricky for them. And they're just not going to hit as hard, whereas the Aoba has 203s, largest cruiser guns at her tier, and some pretty decent accuracy. Pack in some torpedoes and the good speed that allows you to stay away from enemies, you've got an amazing ship. So obviously the big thing right here is gonna be positioning. There is that Miyoko to the south, and realistically the two are pretty comparable. You'll notice that Zach just used his defensive AA fire there to try to get rid of that enemy fighter. And it's a great call. When you're in battles without carriers and you have those consumables, use them. Get rid of those planes that are spotting you. Sure, it's not always going to work, or not always going to help, because you may be hard spotted as well, but it might protect an ally. And here is going to be the first good shot of the game, and HE. I complained about the HE yesterday. Kind of disappointed to see it here again, but at least he's swapping over to AP right away. Clearly probably had it loaded, expecting a destroyer. Now Zach slips into the smoke, is slowing down, ducks under those torpedoes, and is probably going to set up here, which, or not. Looks to be coming back up in speed, maybe realized he was going to overshoot the smoke, but either way, getting back underway. Now, plausibly sitting in that smoke could have been a good move had they stopped inside it, because the torpedoes have gone by. You know, at very minimum, that that isn't going to be an issue. So potentially you're in close to some enemy ships with some good guns. You've got an enemy Nagato there, fires the HE, and a decent choice. The Nagato is a tough ship, some great HE damage there, 3200, and a fire. And that's why, you know, against battleships it's okay, but I personally, once you have a fire going and permanently lit, would swap back to the AP. And maybe my insistence on this just comes down to I was really bad with it for a long time. And still am. You know, destroyers, I just sail around, I don't even think about loading the AP. And then I watch some games where people really do work with it. And now I've got to think, have I been playing this wrong? Maybe the destroyer's AP is a little more useful. But either way, this Nagato is not having a good time. Second fire lit, third fire right there, another 2,900 damage. Zach is starting to stack up the damage. We're a little over 5 minutes in and 30,000 damage on the board. Very respectable, and puts him on cue for like 120k damage game, which at tier 6, very good. But damage isn't everything. You do need to get kills, and to me this Bajioni provides an amazing target to do just that. You can see the Nagato just got wiped out by some Akatsuki torpedoes, and now that Zach is behind the island, he pops the damage control. And that's another big move. So often you see people use their damage control when they're still in the open, another fire gets lit, and they're stuck sucking it up. By waiting until he was safely in cover, Zach has made sure that he's not going to eat all that potential extra damage. And you can see it. He's setting up, preparing himself to take on this Bajioni. Popping in and out of zoom there a bit, using the different levels to try to see if he can get a bit of a glimpse. You know, figuring out what kind of angle the Bajioni's coming out from and where he's going to need to be aiming. He's got AP loaded, he just switched over, and he's ready to do some big damage here. Unfortunately, the Bajioni's bow in, but just wait a little. He's turning, fires off. These are looking good. They wind up just a touch high, only 900 damage, but a decent rate of fire out of these guns. It's not spectacular, 10-second reload, but considering the damage they can do, that's very respectable. And unfortunately, another target that Zach had the ability to shoot and do damage to dies out from under him. That Nagato is burning, got sank by the Akatsuki, and that Bajioni gets finished off by his friendly battleship there. Gets the HE back in the barrels, fires the New York, lights a fire. And I guess that's one of the big things about these Japanese cruisers, is that Japanese fire chance. That slight improvement to your percentage chance really does add up. And it's going to be interesting to see how people play the Zao post 0.6.3 when stealth fire's gone. I still think she'll be very playable, and as long as you know how to use WASD, will still be excellent at kiting and doing damage, but she is going to lose that stealth fire window. So you can see Zach has pulled past the island, focusing on a new target. And if you are going with kind of that fire starter strategy, many targets is really the way you go about it. You light a fire, you move on to the next target, because you don't want to waste a ton of time dumping, damage into targets that are potentially just going to put your fires out. So you light that first one and force them to make a choice. Do they put one fire out, or do they let it burn? If they put it out, you swap back to them and light another one the second damage control is not active. If they let it burn, it's free damage while you're working over another target. And speaking of another target, there's a Sims that's about to run aground. Zach takes the shot, the shells are looking good, and he gets a kill, but not the Sims. It's that New York he lit on fire a couple minutes ago. That's precisely what I'm kind of talking about with the, multiple targets is the way to work an HE loadout. And the best example I have of this, and where I get that strategy from, is my Qckslvrslash. Because it, for the most part, really does rely, at least at range, on HE damage. So you just get used to working ships over, and you just keep swapping. You keep going to the next target. A really good hit, 3,500 damage on that Graf Spee. Prevents the cap, but there's an Atlanta coming out, and already onto the AP, waiting for that Atlanta. The Atlanta comes out side on, and there's the Citadel, 5,100 damage. Sadly, only the Citadel and one overpen though. RNG being a bit of a cruel mistress right now. Just not giving him the big hits, though he does get a second Citadel, and once again, an overpen, pretty much through the stern of the Atlanta. Hopefully this one will be a little kinder. The shells are in the air. The Graf Spee gets finished off in one overpen. What am I talking about? RNG's never kind to you. When you want the damage or need the damage, it just rips it out of your hands, no matter how good your aim was or a shot was. But with B under threat, Zac, I'm guessing, knows that he's got to get back in there. There's a fairly low health Sims who's most likely the one taking it, and this Atlanta. Both targets he can deal with. The Atlanta may be a tier 7 cruiser, but it is not good in one-on-one confrontations. And even worse in 2-on-1. Zac gets the kill shot as the Atlanta's focusing in on that Nuremberg. It also gets away, and this proves perfect because there's the Sims. The Nuremberg also has Hydro, so the Sims is going to have a hard time disappearing here. And, well, the Nuremberg hits him, doesn't finish him. Zac hits him, leaves him on 88 health. And it looks like the Sims just breaks line of sight with the Nuremberg behind the island and pops his smoke. And, hello, torpedoes from behind? There is a destroyer somewhere in the north here, and another kiting the edge of the map. A little odd, those enemy destroyers playing a little too passive for my liking. Speaking of what I would really like to see here is that Nuremberg really should have charged the smoke. Although I can't know that he had the hydroactive or ready. Having that ability to see into the smoke is so crucial, and unfortunately ends up getting wiped out by the Sims. And more weight is starting to fall onto Zac here. They're ahead on points and on ships, but he's pretty much one-on-one with the New Mexico. He's got some allied ships, but you know, they're another 5 to 10 kilometers behind him, and they've got worries of their own because there's still that enemy destroyer who keeps just throwing torps at them. And eventually they're gonna eat them. Which means Zac's gotta work over this New Mexico, and I like what he's doing. He's choosing to get closer. There's that smoke ahead, there's hard cover in the form of the island. If he can get there, he's got safety. The New Mexico isn't a slouch though, so Zac does have to be careful. If this New Mexico, you know, catches him in the side, you know, even at full health at this kind of range, Zac's a one-hit kill. But he gets far enough in that he's now concealed by the edge of the smoke. He's got his plane in the air so he can see over it and is pretty much free to go on to work. Now the other thing I'll say is, oh my god, Sims. Not what I was about to say, but he ducks most of the torpedoes, eating only one, finishes the Sims off, and disappears again. So what I was going to say is Zac is doing the right thing here. He's not stopping. And this comes twofold. One, if you stop moving, a ship can sometimes zone in on where in the smoke you are. Two, the smoke is starting to dissipate. It's been around for a while, and by sailing into it, he's extended the amount of time that he is concealed. The New Mexico is still spotted by his own plane and potentially that Nagato right now. His torpedoes aren't looking like they're gonna hit, but he's got fires and he's doing damage. He's surpassed that 120k threshold that I kind of predicted at the start based on his early damage, and he's continued to work the map over, and more importantly, he's about to secure a cap. And I say more importantly, but this game is kind of slowly fading into unwinnable for the enemy team. It's 2-on-4. The enemy, you know, Zac's team has all the caps, and none of the battleships are on particularly low health. The Atlanta's hurting, but the Atlanta, it can just stay undetected unless that destroyer gets close to him. And it looks like that's kind of what he's hunting. And now's where you kind of end up in a showdown. Zac's still definitely in kill range. He's got torpedoes in the water, and the New Mexico looked to have slowed up there. And I don't know if that's because he was anticipating torpedoes, or he didn't want to drive out in front of the Nagato. But either way, it's looking like he's going to duck the torpedoes, but completely blows his shot there on Zac, and is finally starting to speed up. Now for Zac, I would just sit and wait. 138,000 damage. They've got all 3 caps. They just about had the win until the Atlanta got sank. But the Atlanta did take down that enemy Fubuki. So it's now 3-on-1. And just look at the caps tick away. I can pretty much guarantee you this game is over. I don't see the New Mexico uprooting that Nagato. Definitely not after the shot he just took. And you can see there in chat, Zach was a stock Aoba, which kind of shows how capable this ship really is. And it's a ship that I haven't sailed in a long time for God knows what reason. I really should get back into her. And overall, a very well played by Zach there. 377,000 credits, almost 11,000 experience. Guessing there was some events on and wins of the day, perhaps some flags involved. Got the high caliber, just shy of 138,000 damage, and 3 kills, and really made a difference there. Got a cap, defended B for a while, and played smart. And more importantly, made a difference. You know, that was a tier 7 game, and Zach looked comfortable in it in a stock Aoba. And a lot of that just came down to making the right decisions, knowing when to pull back, distance himself a little, and when to push in. And that's really the difference when you're sailing cruisers, is making those decisions correctly. A lot of people feel when they end up in a low tier, or as low tier, in a higher tier game, they can't do anything, and Zach just proved that wrong. Anyways, thank you very much for sending this one in. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up or subscribing to the channel. Both help me out immensely, and as always, I'm Qckslvrslash, and I'll have another one for you guys later.